Hello everyone, I'm Ken Thomas with Envisor Consulting, and I'm here today with my partner, Ben Gandy.
Hey Ken.
Hey Ben.
Hey folks.
Hey, we're so glad you're here. We're in the middle of a webinar series that outlines and features Envisor's Green Dot operating system. Today we're going to be focusing on the subject of organizational structure. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about the Green Dot operating system. You know, Ben, you and I have spent a lot of time in the industry, and we've built market-leading companies, and we've also had the opportunity to look inside and under the hood of some of the finest landscape companies in the world.
That's right.
And through that exercise and through that practice, we've been able to identify and document some of the industry's best practices that we believe any great organization needs to master, you know, to really become mature and to leverage all their resources. Mm-hmm. In this slide, we've actually taken a snapshot of the building blocks of successful organizations, and we've got it laid out into 3 tiers. The top tier of the Green Dot operating system really focuses in on the executive fundamentals or executive building blocks in any organization. You know, from left to right, the mission, vision, and values, the strategy of the organization, how are we going to get to where we're going, mm-hmm. the structure, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, and the budget. The key executive fundamentals of the organization. Across the middle in the orange section of the slide, we talk about the business process. And we believe that every organization is really just a compilation of individual sales all stacked up on top of each other. Whether it's a $500,000 organization or a $1 billion organization. And we believe that all sales have 6 predictable phases from the lead or the menu of what we actually sell through the scope development into the estimating phase. Finally, how do we close that business? How do we finalize the sale? How do we move it into production? How do we forecast and manage the work in process? And finally, how do we close out the work? Mm-hmm. You know, successful organizations have mastered and documented the business process, and it allows them to leverage the organization to the next level. And finally, on the bottom of this graphic, we talk about the importance of business development and client relationship management, because obviously we need to sell the work and we need to retain the customers.
That's right.
And then to the bottom right, we talk about what it takes to produce work effectively, safely, with the highest quality and the highest productivity. And finally, at the very, very bottom right, what are we measuring on a day-to-day basis? All great organizations have focused in on all of these key ingredients, and they've mastered those ingredients, which has allowed them to become successful.
That's right. That's right.
So Ben, why do you think it's important to document an operating system?
You know, what it's allowed us to do, Ken, is to really have an anchor point, a set point that gives us a tool to assess organizations, to understand them. It provides a means for us, or at least a reference point for us to teach and to train and to coach organizations, because we're going to find absences in the Green Dot operating system with any organization, mm-hmm. and focus on that will help to mature that organization. We find an awful lot of times when we get called into an engagement, it's because an organization is stuck. It may be at $2 million, it may be at $20 million, but mm-hmm. they're stuck somewhere in terms of profitability, in terms of growth, or in terms of quality of life. And this template, this codification of what we believe are the key ingredients to successful business really allows us to break through the statistics and mature that organization further. Because we want to see the organizations that we work with be successful, right? That's the whole mission of our organization.
That's right.
This template has really leveraged that tremendously.
Yeah, awesome. Right. Well, let's dig in a little bit to the idea around structure. And again, if you take a look at the graphic on the top of the slide, we've talked about vision. You know, what's our future picture of success as an organization? Mm-hmm. We talk about strategy. What's the roadmap to get there?
Sure.
You know, at the end of the day, who's going to execute on that strategy? Well, it's the team, the structure. It's got to be set up to be able to execute on the strategy that we've defined. And we've gone in a lot of companies over the last 10, 15 years, and we've seen a lot of org charts, a lot of beautiful org charts, and very typical hierarchy, owner, leaders, managers, so forth, all the way down, or we've seen circular org charts. We've seen a wide variety of diagrams But the bottom line is, what we tend to see way too often is not a lot of clarity, but a lot of blurred lines. As pretty as the org chart looks, is it effective? Are we doing the right things in those boxes? Do we have the right people in the right seat?
That's right.
Going forward.
Right.
Organizations evolve and organizational structure evolves. When you're a startup company, an entrepreneurial company, the org chart is fairly simple. The owner does everything and has a few people around them. But as a company grows, that org chart needs to evolve into a specialized org chart where we have departments and divisions and sales and operations. And it's really important at that point, as Jim Collins says in Good to Great, to put the right person in the right seat. The truth is we're all designed differently. We're all wired a little differently. Some of us are wired for relationship and for sales, while others of us are wired for logistics and productivity, and even others for the numbers. So the key is, how do we get the org chart divided up in the right way, find the right people that are wired and skilled and have the right abilities to be put in the right seat, because then we're operating at our peak efficiency if we're operating within our lane of skills.
Right.
If that makes sense. So how do you know what those skill sets are, and how do you identify those in your team members or in new candidates? I mean, what do you think, Ben?
One of the tools that we've leveraged over the years and we've made really good use of is personality profiles. It's an objective measure. We've used the DISC profile, cumulative index, Myers-Briggs, other personality profile tests to help us in some objective way to understand, well, is this a relational-oriented person? Is it a logistically-oriented person, high detail-oriented? Let's put that person where their natural acumen, can best be utilized by the whole organization and where they can be happy.
Right, right. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I'm kind of terrible at understanding subjectively if that person's the right person or not. I learned a long time ago I needed a tool to give me a little bit of an objective thought process in terms of placing the people in the right seat. So conceptually, it makes a lot of sense. Get the org chart built, put the right person in the right seat, utilizing the best of their skills. And finally, how do you define that position through a very detailed job description, and by setting metrics or numbers that each person has to be accountable to? That's when that static org chart really becomes effective and impactful, and we get the best return on investment for the people in our organization.
That's right, and if we set it up in that way, then we can evaluate. As Gino Wickman says in Traction, do they get it? Do they want it? Can they do it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do they have the capabilities? Do they get it? Do they get it? Do they want it? I think that you and I have seen a lot of people that are in well set up organizations that maybe do get it and do want it, but don't really have the capability to do it. And so be it. If you have a good org chart and you understand the metrics and the job description, the deliverables associated with that organization, then you can assess people appropriately and make sure they get in the right spot.
Absolutely. Right? Yep. Very important.
In small organizations, the typical org chart is whatever it is, but the truth of the matter is everybody does everything, right? You got to wear multiple hats in small organizations. That's just what's required, and it can be kind of fun, actually, as a startup, with everybody doing everything. Most people do aspire to grow and mature that organization, and you enter a phase in organizational development that we refer to as adolescence, where all of a sudden it gets harder.
Right.
Very often we'll see owners who will train their hires, the next people that they're adding to the organization, to do what they did, which is do everything, right? And you end up with nobody's really accountable for anything. So it's so important at this phase in terms of organizational development to develop processes so that you understand the difference between sales and client-facing and customer relationship duties and accountabilities, and logistic duties and scheduling and those type of things, those accountabilities and duties, and begin to separate. Then you get leverage on the different talents that people have, because everybody does everything is a poor structure and it doesn't really work out. You have to kind of make businesses mature and grow through that, and structure is a big piece of that. ultimately, in the long run, the people that we work with tend to want to grow into mature organizations where you have a lot of specialization, where everybody has a job and not necessarily 2 or 3 or 5 jobs, right? And ultimately, that organization is really a whole lot easier to run than the adolescent organization, even though it's the adolescent organization is smaller and the bigger organizations are larger, obviously. The specificity of duties just makes it easier. It makes it easier to measure, makes it easier to train, makes it easier to have people perform. So it's important just to kind of realize where you are in terms of your structure. It relates to where you are in terms of the growth of the whole organization, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, taking the big complicated mess of an organization and breaking it up into small pieces, divisions, tasks, branches, however it may be, and giving everybody a chance to run a smaller piece of the business that really makes it doable and allows them to be successful.
Exactly.
Another concept, and we mentioned it briefly from the book Traction, which is a great resource. If you haven't read it, Ben and I should have wrote it ourselves.
We should have, but we missed the boat.
We missed it. So Gino Wickman beat us to it, but it's a great resource. But Gino talks about the importance of everyone in that org chart having a number. There are salespeople in your organization that are responsible for driving top-line revenue. They need to know what their revenue goal is for the year, if it's new business or if it's upselling existing business. It might even be retaining existing customers. So everybody needs a number. Sales numbers relate to new business and upselling current clients and keeping your retention levels high. There are production numbers that are really important as well. Obviously, we want to do a good job at keeping our team safe. It's kind of a moral responsibility of any great organization. There are safety numbers that need to be hit and measured that actually also become very profitable if we keep our workman's comp mods down. Labor is, 70% of what we do every day. So managing labor hours, understanding the budgeted hours against the actual hours, understanding labor efficiency in your role as a production manager or production superintendent is hugely important. And then this idea around gross margin. Gross margin, if you're not familiar with it, is really just the amount of dollars that are left from a sale after you've paid your direct expenses, your materials, your labor, your subcontractor, and possibly your equipment. Gross margin is a huge metric across our industry, and we have some key ratios that help us to know if we're on track or off track. Additionally, when it comes to having a number, we've got some good benchmarks about how much business an account manager should be able to manage, how many crews we should be able to manage with a certain production manager. So the numbers make up the parameters and the guardrails within each one of the structural boxes. So we have day-to-day accountabilities, but they all tie back to the numbers and getting a return on investment from everybody that we hire within the organization.
That's just it, Ken. It's so important to understand that as you are building the org chart, the organizational chart, the structure, you have to associate the budget, you have to associate the numbers with everybody inside every one of those boxes. When we talk about structure in the Green Dot operating system and organizational development, one of the things that we want to urge everybody that's watching us, don't recreate the wheel. There are sort of known ratios that are out there that have been circulating in the industry for a long time. If you need help, reach out. We'd be happy to help you. There's no need to recreate the wheel in terms of the ratios, how many account managers per revenue or per client or per crew. And those ratios are templated kind of out there, and they relate back to good financial practices. As you're thinking about your structure and developing it, think strategically, right? Where do I really want to be? What's my strategy for getting there? And that may involve creating the org chart somewhat agnostic of who's here. It's just putting the boxes together. Okay, to fulfill this particular vision and execute on this strategy, I will need these players. And then, after that's created, all right, who have I got and who do I put in? And it gets hard. It gets emotional at that point because we have attachments, we have relationships to those people. Not everybody in your organization fits neatly into a box. Not everybody that got you here is going to get you there. That's just part of business, and that's where it gets difficult. But it's so highly valuable. You can't mature your organization without the right structure. And it is dynamic. It changes as the organization grows.
That's right. And, I'm obviously involved with the greenery down in South Carolina, and we've gone through a lot of new structural initiatives, from dividing our client relationship managers away from our production managers and moving people into new boxes. And it is very, very high value. Right. It's a very high value exercise, but it's really difficult because you're dealing, as you mentioned, with emotions and with people's lives. And a big part of any change initiative is how you paint the success of that, or how you paint the win for the team as well. So it's the org chart is a dynamic tool. It is the group of people who execute on our strategy.
We would be remiss if we didn't mention that as you're thinking about structure, there's always problems in business. We will never run out of problems. And it's always tempting as you're developing your business, as you grow in your organization, to throw people at problems. The challenge can be that as you throw managers at different tasks, you can kind of get fat in the middle. Ooh. Like old men, right?
Yeah.
Getting fat in the middle is getting fat in the middle of your financial statement, getting fat in your indirects, where you've got more salaries than really your revenues can overcome. Right.
That's right. I mean, every time we add a position, it reminds me of something Truett Cathy used to say at Chick-fil-A is, in our organization, you're either making chicken, selling chicken, or supporting somebody who's making chicken or selling chicken.
Right.
At the end of the day, throwing more people at the problem is never a long-term solution. It may have a short-term impact, a positive impact, but eventually it just creates, more confusion and more chaos, and again, the numbers evolve poorly.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So as you're thinking about your structure, be aware that every organization will want to get fat in the middle at some point. Bureaucracies just grow.
That's right.
You gotta push hard, push back against that.
Yes. Ben, it's easy to say, that people are your greatest asset. The key is, do we believe that, and are we doing the right things to invest in our people, to grow our people, to retain our people? And a big part of it is exactly what we've been talking about, building an organizational structure that allows people to grow to their highest level, putting the right people in the right seat, defining their job description in detail, helping them understand what they need to be doing on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, and measuring those people, through the key performance indicators that are so important in the organization.
That's right. It's just a huge piece of business. It is a huge piece of the Green Dot operating system, is understanding the structure. It's a big part of our consulting practice, is helping people to analyze, digest, and correct, if need be, their structure. Yeah, it's a key to success.
Yeah, and easily when we look at business structure and we assess a company, we look at direct report numbers and we look at what the numbers tell us, and we relate it back to the structure. It's all interconnected within the organization.
That's right. So it's mission critical to your success. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us on the webinar today. If you have any questions about this topic, please feel free to reach out. Happy to engage with us. Be sure and follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn, or just find us on the web.
Yeah, and I want to put a plug in for Envisor Academy as well. It's our online educational platform. If you go to our website, click on the tab Envisor Academy. There's some great course curriculum there for your managers and your leaders, and it's a learn as you go platform. You're going to love it.
Thanks so much.